Hundreds of millions of our best philanthropic dollars have been thrown at the problem of the Jewish community's declining numbers. So, in the past decade, which endeavor has had the most significant positive impact on the problem? Hillel? Birthright? Surprise, it's JDate. JDate has had by far the most impact on the problem of any other venture. The numbers are staggering. Numbers that very few in the Jewish community are even aware of. And the crazy thing is, JDate made money doing it. JDate is the most profitable online dating service in the world by a long shot. But JDate is more than just the story of a successful for-profit business. When we see the results, they compel us to ask ourselves, what other problems that we face as a Jewish community can be solved with similar thinking? Now, before we go any further, I should disclose I am not, nor was I ever, an employee of JDate. I also don't work for any Jewish organization. I make video games for a living, like games for Star Wars and Mission Impossible. I'm not an investor in JDate either. I am, however, a JDate success story. I met my wife on JDate. In fact, I literally scoured the earth to find her. The story goes a little bit like this. Years ago, I was managing a team at Microsoft in Seattle, designing video game systems. And I was single, and when you're Jewish and you're single in Seattle, you go on JDate. And one day I realized, with the vast majority of Jews scattered elsewhere in the world, why should I necessarily assume that my beshert also happens to live in the same rainy corner of the earth that I do? Say hello to Wandering Jew 8. 2 weeks before a business trip, I'd list my JDate profile in that city. And when my business meetings finished, I'd go out on JDates, searching for the one. And by the time I'd found her, I'd been on JDates in 18 cities on 4 different continents. And what I learned is, when you're Jewish and you're single, anywhere on the planet, you go on JDate. Denver, Buenos Aires, London. Within 10 years, JDate has completely changed Jewish single culture across the globe. So in the end, how did I meet my wife? Well, she was doing the exact same thing. She was in medical school in New York. She was tired of the New York dating scene, so she listed her profile in Chicago. I lived in Seattle, she lived in New York, and we met in Chicago. That JDate subscription was the best $300 investment I've ever made, and it's still generating returns. Ah, what a cutie. Years later, when I was running my own video game company, I looked back at JDate as a business and became fascinated by it. Now, JDate is a publicly traded for-profit company, so it's all there in their quarterly disclosures. JDate has 750,000 users a year across the globe. About a third of them, 250,000 Jews, pay for the premium service. Now, to put this in perspective, Birthright peaked last year at around 25,000 participants. In the US, there are only 1.8 million single adult Jews, which means that over 20% of all of them are active on JDate in a given year. JDate reverses decades of assumptions about this problem. Now, as a former president of my Hillel and as a Birthright participant, I used to think if you want to get young Jews to participate, you need to give them free food, free alcohol, free trips to Israel, free honeymoon at Michael Steinhardt's Caribbean villa for marrying somebody on your Birthright trip. JDate flipped that model around. The users are paying them. JDate subscribers pay $30 a month, which is over 3 times what you'd pay for a non-Jewish dating site. JDate is making $30 million a year with a 90% profit margin. So how did they achieve this? Well, for starters, JDate wasn't worried about solving issues for the global Jewish community, like intermarriage or continuity. There were Jews out there who wanted to find other Jews to date and couldn't. JDate built a targeted consumer product to address this problem, a product so amazing their audience would pay for it. Now, JDate was started in 1997. I don't know if you remember what the internet looked like back in 1997, but I wouldn't have trusted the internet to sell me a snow shovel back in 1997, let alone set me up on a date. I mean, forget Facebook. In 1997, Mark Zuckerberg was still preparing for his bar mitzvah. In 1997, the audience of Jews willing to date other Jews via the internet was super tiny. For JDate to grow their business, they had to build a global brand. They had to make Jewish dating appealing to Jews who weren't interested in dating other Jews to begin with. Billboards in Times Square, taking over tube stops in London. The money that JDate earned drove their growth into a massive global phenomenon. But JDate's positive global impact on the Jewish community was simply an unintended consequence of growing their business and selling their product. That's the approach. Look past the global problem and focus on the needs of the individual. Build a consumer product business that is laser focused on satisfying a customer, a product so awesome, they'll pay for it. And finally, make solving the global problem a side effect, an unintended consequence of growing your for-profit business. Now on to the real question. What other problems that we face as a Jewish community can be solved with similar thinking? I'll propose one. Jewish education, making it relevant again. Now, I happen to make video games for a living, and when you have a hammer, well, everything looks like a nail. But I assure you that if you ask an expert in any other consumer-focused industry, movies, music, restaurants, social networks, they will come up with even better ideas to solve even bigger problems. Video games just happens to be my hammer. Now, your 8-year-old may not know who Bar Kokhba is, but I'll bet that thanks to video games, they can name 100 Pokemon characters and relay their complete backstory to you. You're welcome. And that's because video games are excellent at educating kids, by accident. Games focus first on fulfilling a need, providing hundreds of hours of fun and entertainment. For video games, it's an unintended consequence that we fill their heads with the game's backstory. So what if, like JDate, we solved the education problem as a side effect of building a successful consumer products business? Now, video games, they need a backstory, like the Star Wars universe or Lord of the Rings. What if we simply used Jewish history as that lore? Now, we Jews have incredible material to work with. I know this because the most successful video games are constantly stealing that material from us. Assassin's Creed takes place in medieval Jerusalem. And when Jewish kids play this content, they love it for the exact same reason that we all get so excited when there's a Jewish character on The Simpsons. We can relate to it. It's ours. World of Warcraft, the most successful video game ever, has golems in it. Pokemon has golems in it. If I could play a game where I could summon my own pet golem with my friends and go up against a dark mob of threatening Cossacks, I'd buy that game in a second. And so what I'm about to show you isn't an actual product. It's what we call, in the industry, a concept video. Nobody is actually building this. This is simply an animation I compiled myself in about 2 weekends to illustrate for you what a massively multiplayer Jewish video game for kids might look like. As someone who's built many successful video games, I can tell you that like JDate, you can build a profitable product that can compete head-to-head for a Jewish kid's attention against Pokemon and Skylanders. And as a side effect, as an unintended consequence, you would fill more heads and hearts with excitement about Jewish history than you ever could before. By looking past the global problem to address a specific customer need, by creating a consumer product that is so awesome that customers will pay for it, and by building and growing a for-profit business around it, you can achieve greater reach and greater impact. And if we look past online dating and past video games, there is an arsenal of exciting ideas within our grasp. social networks, music labels, online services, to connect Israel with the diaspora, to encourage Jewish leadership, and to address the rest of the Jewish life cycle. I believe that JDate can do more for us than address the specific problem of Jewish continuity. JDate can provide us with the inspiration to solve the rest of them. Thank you.